for December likely eased year-on-year and could fall within the 1.2 to 2% range. And the Philippine peso and the Philippine Stock Exchange Index closed lower on the last trading day of the year. The 2026 General Appropriations Bill is now up for President Marcos's signature. That's after Congress ratified the BICAM report on the 6.793 trillion peso spending bill. The House and the Senate voted separately through a voice vote, with ratification in the lower chamber lasting just 42 seconds, preventing minority lawmakers from even explaining their vote.
I move that we ratify the said Conference Committee report.
All those in favor of the Conference Committee report say aye.
Aye.
All those against say nay.
Mr. Speaker.
The ayes have it. The said Conference Committee report is ratified.
The minority argues that over 200 billion pesos worth of unprogrammed appropriations is unconstitutional. These items are standby funds in the national budget that can only be released if additional funding sources are available. Programs under this category are several DTI programs and the AFP modernization. These congressmen warn that they will take their case to the Supreme Court if Marcos won't veto the unprogrammed funds.
Bakit antigas ng ulo? Di ba? Bakit di lang tanggalin? Ngayon, kung may dumating na pondo, edi mag-supplemental budget. Kung hindi ibibito ni Presidente yung unprogrammed funds, at aaprobahan niya ito, idadali natin sa Korte Suprema.
At hindi rin totoo na pork-free ang budget na ito. Totoo, binawasan ang pork sa DPWH pero nilipat naman sa iba. No? Kasama na rito yung malaking dinagdag sa LGU pork na tinatawag natin. No? Mahigit 58 billion ang nadagdag sa mga lump sums para sa LGU, para sa mga infrastructure projects at ayuda na idadaan na sa LGU ngayon.
In the Senate, 6 senators voted yes to the BICAM report, but with reservations due to the presence of the financial aid programs and unprogrammed appropriations. Senators Rodante Marcoleta and Robin Padilla registered a no vote, arguing that these items are prone to corruption.
My reservations arise from the national government's continued failure to remit PhilHealth's actual legally mandated sin tax revenues from year 2023 onwards and statutory shares from PCSO and PAGCOR since 2019.
AIX, maifif, tupad. Samut-sari na ang naimbentong dagdag na listahan ng mga ayuda. Iba't ibang termino rin ang nagagamit. Ngunit patuloy lamang itong naabuso at nagagamit pampolitika.
Senate Finance Committee Chair Sherwin Gatchalian assured his colleagues that there are safeguards in place to protect the budget from political patronage, like preventing politicians from directly participating in aid programs.
Well, importante siya dahil in-apply natin yun sa lahat ng cash aid, lahat ng mga ayuda programs ng gobyerno na hindi pwedeng gamitin ng politiko for their own political patronage.
Headline inflation likely eased in December as lower power prices helped temper higher food costs during the holidays. In its months ahead forecast, the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas sees December inflation likely settling between 1.2 and 2%. That is slower than the 2.9% clip seen a year ago. If the upper end holds, inflation will have picked up from November's 1.5%. It would also mark the fastest pace in 10 months and a return to the central bank's 2 to 4% target range. At the lower end, it would have been the slowest inflation print in 5 months or since July. The Bangko Sentral said upward pressures may come from food prices, holiday demand, and higher LPG and gasoline prices. However, lower electricity, diesel, and kerosene prices during the month may have helped keep inflation in check. Meanwhile, the central bank said it will continue to monitor price and growth data as it decides its next policy move. BSP Governor Eli Remolona earlier said the current easing cycle is nearing its end but still left the door open to a final 25 basis points reduction next year. In other news, the Philippines and the United Arab Emirates are set to sign a Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement, or CEPA, in January. Trade Secretary Cristina Roque said a Philippine delegation led by President Bongbong Marcos will travel to the UAE in mid-January for the signing. This will mark the country's first free trade agreement with a Middle Eastern country. Roque said the visit will also include meetings with UAE firms to draw investments, particularly in manufacturing. The UAE is the Philippines' 18th largest trading partner and its top export market in the Gulf Cooperation Council. Negotiations for the CEPA began in 2022 and are expected to expand market access and boost investment flows. Now, aside from the UAE, the Philippines is also targeting trade deals with Chile and the European Union next year. Now, Philippine markets wrapped up trading for 2025 with the local bourse and the local unit both ending the year in negative territory. The peso depreciated yesterday by 8 centavos to close at 58.79 to the dollar as the greenback got a boost from better than expected third quarter U.S. GDP figures. Now, year to date, the local unit slid by 1.61%, with a trader attributing its weakness to narrowing interest differential, lackluster equities market, and the corruption scandal. 10-year government bond yields ticked up to 6.072%. That's from the previous close of 6.054%. Now, as for the PSEI, it fell by 0.2% due to a lack of positive catalysts. The broader all-shares index, however, rose by 0.25%, with local counters a mixed bag. Year-to-date, Philippine equities tumbled by 7.29%. In November, the PSEI earned the title of the world's worst-performing stock market from Bloomberg, with structural challenges and sluggish turnover weighing on sentiment. For PSE President and CEO Ramon Monzon, the decline in numbers is a decline in trust and confidence brought about by the corruption scandal, disappointing GDP figures, and a weak peso. He says the government should hold corrupt officials accountable and institute lasting reforms to reverse the PSEI's fortunes and make it one of the best-performing markets in 2026. Trading resumes on January 2nd. Meanwhile, a drop in tech stocks weighed down on U.S. indices yesterday. The Dow and the Nasdaq fell by 0.5%, while the S&P 500 slid by 0.33%. Now, shares of Nvidia, Meta, and Oracle, as well as Tesla, declined in moves that analysts pegged to traders booking profits before the year ends. Benchmark 10-year Treasury yields ticked down to 4.115%, while gold prices retreated from their record highs to close at $4,343 per ounce. Stock futures are trading near the flat line, with the Dow unchanged and both the Dow and the S&P falling by 0.1% each. Now, Asian markets are mostly up on the penultimate day of the year, tracking Wall Street losses. Australia's ASX 200 and South Korea's Kospi are both up by less than 0.1%, while Japan's Nikkei 225 is down by 0.2%. It is quiet on the trading floor today, and it's the best time to also quietly start positioning trades for 2026. And here to help us out with that, we have Japhet Tantiangco, Research Manager over at PhilStocks. Japhet, good morning. So excited to be seeing you here.
Morning, Ma'am Dani. Belated Merry Christmas, advance Happy New Year, and thank you very much for inviting me.
So happy to see you, and yes, happy holidays. You're still in the thick of holidays, but it is a quiet day today on the trading floor, so thank you for joining us. But let's talk about what happened yesterday. Some people were hoping for a last-minute rally, bargain hunting, but that's definitely not what we saw. Can you give us your insights on that? Are you disappointed? Did you expect that?
Well, if you're going to look at the local market's performance yesterday, it was in the positive territory for the most of the day. So we can say that there's been bargain hunting. Some investors took positions ahead or in preparation of the year ahead. However, the in the final minutes, so the local market declined. So we really saw some, last minute selling yesterday, which goes to show that ultimately cautiousness prevailed. Investors' cautiousness prevailed. Investors are still not that positive with respect to the year ahead, particularly with respect to our economic outlook. And that is why the market still ended in negative. Also, if you're going to look at the value turnover, it's been thin, which goes to show that many have stayed on the sidelines while waiting for what's gonna happen ahead.
All right, so this cautiousness that you're mentioning, Japheth, can you attribute it completely, as the CEO of the PSE, Ramon Monzon, said, completely because of the corruption issue, or are there other things here in terms of our corporates and our markets that are in play?
If you're going to look at fundamentals, corporate fundamentals are still sound. It's still doing well. Many of our companies are still posting higher figures compared to the same period last year. Not as fast as investors would want it to be, but still they're growing. And bargain is still there. I mean, if you're going to look at the local market, price to earnings ratio wise, we are below historical as well as regional average. I believe what's really triggering, or what's fueling that cautiousness on the part of investors as well. Number one, correct. It's the corruption issues here in the Philippines. More so, its effect, or its anticipated effect on our economic outlook. I mean, we already had a taste on the third quarter of 2025. GDP growth has been slow, dragged mainly by investments, particularly public infrastructure spending. It could also happen in the fourth quarter 2025. And if it's not resolved, then it might continue on towards 2026. I believe this is the main thing that's triggering investors' cautiousness. At the same time, if you're going to look at it on the part of foreign investors, they're also cautious with respect to the local currency. I mean, our local currency has posted weakness this year, and foreign investors don't want that. And so, if peso continues to depreciate, then foreign investors will also be cautious towards us. And then, if you're going to position the local market with respect to the global market, I think another thing that investors are watching out for is the structural changes here in the country. I mean, we've been left behind by our peers because of, this artificial intelligence trend, which apparently we don't have that much. And so investors are looking towards next year. I mean, if we still don't have it, then rather just, invest abroad rather than staying here in the Philippines.
Japheth, let's talk about the fundamentals. You mentioned profitability of the corporates. Give us a good summary, an easy to digest summary of the past year when it comes to the earnings of corporates. Which sectors were disappointing? Which sectors surprised on the positive?
Well, if you're going to look at, let's just look at the index members for now. If you're going to look at the index members, if my memory serves me right, more than 20 of the 30 companies, I believe 24 were still able to post good figures. Or when I say good figures, they were still able to post higher bottom lines compared to the same period last year. If we're basing this on the first three quarters, the first 9 months. And of the 24, many were still able to post double-digit growth. If you're going to look at it sector-wise, the banking sector, they weren't able to, it was a mixed picture, but overall, many were still able to post higher numbers. Same with the property sector. Even with the conglomerates, conglomerates were able to post good figures. With respect to the telco, we've seen a slowdown with respect to Globe and PLDT, but Converge was still able to, to grow their numbers. It's a mixed picture if you're going to look at earnings, but in general, many were still able to post good numbers. Other things, other notable things. Well, if you're going to look at ICT, if you're going to look at Pure Gold, which are representatives of what of our trade as well as our consumer retail sector, they were able to post good numbers. So fundamentals are still sound if we're going to look at it based on earnings.
What about the pullback from foreign investors? So net foreign selling for the year, 47.13 billion. That's up 86.6% year on year. So painful.
Yes.
What are you expecting for 2026? Will we even get that amount back?
Well, the problem right now with respect to the local market right now, we can say that I can say that we're almost dried up with respect to foreign investments.
Wow.
Many investors have already, many foreign investors have already. If you're going to look at the figures, not just this year, but even in the past years, we've been continuous in respect to net foreign selling. And so foreign investors has been continuously leaving us. I mean, if they're going to enter into the local market, it's just for trades, not for long-term investments. They're just going to flip it. I mean, that's yeah.
Okay.
So that's been the correct. So as far as we can see with the numbers, that's how foreign investors are just doing. With respect to narratives, do we expect them to get back? Well, again, it depends. Number one, will the corruption issues here in the Philippines be resolved? And more so, will our local economy, in terms of growth, get back on track? Will the local currency strengthen? And finally, will we be able to see structural changes here in the country? Will we be able to, if not catch up, at least start with respect to that, to that artificial intelligence narrative or that AI story? I think this is what foreign investors are looking for. And if they don't see them here in the Philippines, then the little that we have, they might still pull out, or they might just not invest here in the Philippines.
What is your outlook on the rate differential that's going to be happening and the impact of that on Philippine equities? When you're looking at the Fed, you saw the third quarter GDP of the US, very surprising, diba? And then their interest rates are not that far from ours. We are still in the easing cycle, but the BSP has said maybe that's almost at the tail end. Inflation is very low. So for next year, what are your indicators? What are you looking at when it comes to the rates to see that, okay, the equities are going to be doing better than this year?
With respect to interest rates, of course, what we're going to look forward to ultimately is the GDP as well as the inflation figures. These are the main determinants of interest rates or policy rates. But the BSP has already mentioned that they're already at the tail end of their easing cycle, and I do agree with the BSP that or rather what even if you lower rates, I think it's not gonna be of much help to the local economy, given that more of our problems is stemming out of confidence, consumer and investors' confidence. So here in the Philippines, interest rates might not be moving that much moving forward. It may go down lower next year, but not that much. With respect to the US, of course, what we're looking at is also the same. Inflation and inflation and GDP. If inflation, if inflation in the US continues to decline, and if GDP, declines too, then we may see further rate cuts from the Fed. But if GDP strengthens, whereas inflation moves up, then the Federal Reserve is expected to stop their policy easing too. Now, you look at the two, if the BSP stops with the scenario is this: if the BSP stops with their policy easing and the Fed continues with theirs, then we expect a positive interest rate differential in favor of the Philippines, and this is going to somehow help the local equity markets. However, if the BSP stays as is and the Federal Reserve stays as is as well, then it's not gonna be of much help to to the local market.
Japheth, the million-dollar question that our viewers want to know, where should we be putting our money in 2026? If it's stocks, which type of sectors? Should it be, commodities? We're wild this 2025. Give us your shining picks.
Well, first I would like to apologize because I already sound like a broken record with this one. But well, first for long-term investors, we still advise them to be on the cautious side. And if you're gonna be cautious, then we're still gonna go after stocks that are good in terms of paying dividends. So that's really our advice. Stocks with strong fundamentals, but at the same time, good dividend payers. Um, Now, for those who are into short term, there are some stocks that we are looking at, and these are stocks that they can trade, but they have to be cautious with it. Last year we've seen the rise of gold, and at the same time, gold connected stocks. If you're going to look at the performances of the likes of Apex, Philex Mining, OGP, they performed well. And so far, gold still has momentum. And if gold rises further next year, then it's possible that the gold connected stocks might also rise further. And so for traders, they can go for it. But again, caution is advised. Finally, as mentioned a while ago, the local market still at bargain levels. We still have a lot of stocks that are good for accumulation. But again, we have to be, we really have to be careful. We really have to be careful. I mean, fundamentals are good, but given the sentiment, they could still decline moving forward. And so we really have to be cautious with respect to our accumulation.
All right. So stick to defensive stocks and, of course, be very,
Yes.
very good with your research if you want to take some more risks there. Thank you so much, Japheth Tantiangco, Research Manager over at PhilStocks. You're watching Money Talks, World News coming up. China stages extensive war games around Taiwan. And the Winter Olympic torch makes its way through southern Italy. Keep it here on One News. Welcome back to Money Talks. Here are the headlines from around the globe. U.S. President Donald Trump met separately with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. In his meeting with Netanyahu, Trump said he is pushing to move quickly to the second phase of his Gaza ceasefire plan, adding that Hamas will be given a short time to disarm. Trump said Israel has complied with that agreement, though disagreements remain over the West Bank. Prior to that, Trump held talks with Zelensky on efforts to end the war in the Ukraine. No major breakthroughs were announced, but both leaders said talks are progressing and peace could be within reach. China has launched live-fire military drills around Taiwan. Beijing says the exercises are a warning against Taiwanese independence and come days after the U.S. approved $11 billion in arms sales to Taiwan. Taiwan says its military is on alert and has deployed Coast Guard ships to safeguard its waters. And the Olympic torch made a dramatic pass through southern Italy, scaling a rock face and zipping through the air in the region of Puglia. The relay began in Matera and traveled through several towns before ending the day in Taranto. The flame will continue its journey across Italy, arriving in Cortina d'Ampezzo in January before reaching Milano for the opening ceremony in February. Still on Italy, Italy welcomed over 46,000 Filipino tourists last year, part of a record-breaking tourism boom into the country. But iconic cities like Rome and Venice are now overwhelmed, prompting the Italian government to steer visitors towards lesser-known destinations. Jade Agustin has this story.
All roads lead to Rome, a phrase describing the ancient Roman Empire's strategy to connect all of its territory to the capital. Centuries later, all roads still lead there, it seems, with Rome drawing millions of visitors around the world each year. Data gathered by Italy's tourism agency INIT indicates 46,000 Philippine residents traveled to Italy in 2024, generating 657,000 overnight stays. That translates to more than 14 nights per person. Among the main reasons Filipinos cite for choosing Italy are cultural holidays, followed by business and familial visits. Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni says Italy ranks first in Europe for regional tourism competitiveness and fifth globally.
The second in Europe for tourist presences, with almost 58 million international arrivals. We are in fifth place in the global ranking of the most visited countries. And we are about to climb another position, numbers that make us proud of the work we have done.
Tourism remains a major driver of Italy's economy, contributing 10.8% to its GDP in 2024 and growing. In 2024, INIT data showed total tourist arrivals reached 139.6 million, exceeding pre-pandemic levels. Research shows tourism in Europe, including Italy, will exceed the ratio of one visitor per resident. With iconic destinations facing overcrowding, the ministry has launched initiatives to distribute tourism more evenly across the country, highlighting undiscovered regions. This place, Lago Albano, is just an hour away from Rome. It's one of the places that Italy wants tourists to visit. It's a volcanic crater lake located in the Lazio region, where the Pope's summer residence, Castel Gandolfo, is located. Villa Barberini is among the pontifical villas of Castel Gandolfo. Its gardens are famous for its botanical and archaeological beauty. A portion of the villa is open to the public for tours. If you're into culinary history, check out Antico Restaurante Pagnanelli, a Michelin guide-listed restaurant in Castel Gandolfo that has been operating since 1882. Aside from the delicious food, you can also enjoy a spectacular view of Lake Albano. Also in Lazio region is a centuries-old vineyard. This is a 12-hectare vineyard in Lazio region. It's located southeast of Rome, and this particular vineyard has been with the family since 1721. Just how old is it? You can see the actual pathway from this vineyard leading all the way to Rome.
That street were used to carry the wine from the Castelli Romani area to the city of Rome by using cars or amphora. So this is something important that make a connection, a link between the historical part of this area, and it represents something that best represents the goal of our philosophy. So Castelli Romani area is not something that connects Rome like geographically, but also economically and culturally.
The family business has been around for about 300 years, making Cantina Costantini among the oldest wineries in Italy. They also offer a host of other activities in the vineyard, from trekking, tasting, to picnics. So while Rome draws millions each year, the smartest travelers know Italy's greatest treasures lie along the roads less traveled. Reporting from Rome, Italy, I'm Jade Agustin, WR1 News.
And that's it for Money Talk. Sitting in for Cathy Yang, I'm Danny Laurel. Catch us again tomorrow at 9:30 a.m. Kapatid, we are One News, all sides, all the time. Have a great day ahead.